So the big question is this. How do you take $42,000 in assets in a one TrackMan Bay facility in the back of a CrossFit gym and turn it into a 12-bay, 17,000 square foot training facility in just a few years? That's the question, and this is the podcast that's going to give you the answer. Welcome to Inside the Room on Stock Shot Secrets. All right, everybody, we are here at what we're going to call, I think we should call this the Stock Shot Studio. As you can tell, the quality of this is better because I figured I probably shouldn't be doing podcasts in my car because that's probably not safe. But we have a really great series that we're going to start. This is going to be called Inside the Room, where we're going to kind of take a deep dive into TGR, just the people that make up TGR, the instructors, like maybe operations, marketing, sales. And today we basically have you could almost say like you're a founder of TGR, like one of the founding principals, because you've been with me forever from COVID to us having to deal with COVID, which might have ended with too many bottles of Elijah Craig to get through that whole situation, which was miserable. But it's with my great pleasure to basically introduce you to Mitch Farrer, one of my best buddies, teammates in crime, amazing player. Mitch, just to give a quick backstory, which he can kind of go into, but Mitch was caddied on tour for maybe about a year or so, played professional golf, won a national championship at Nova Southeastern, an incredible golfer in himself, probably the best short game this side of the Mississippi, and just the dude can basically talk to a cat. So, because I don't know if there's anybody in the world that doesn't love Mitch Farrer. So, Mitch, thanks for being here, buddy.
Pleasure to be here, Kyle. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit, just to kind of give a little backstory just on you. I mean, obviously growing up in England, right, golf is way different. So, like, just tell us a little bit about your backstory with starting golf in England, and why not soccer, and, like, why not rugby, or maybe that was part of the journey.
No, it was, for sure. I played every sport growing up, as every kid does, and my best friend, when I was about 12 years of age, he just was an amazing player. He played with Rory and Tommy Fleetwood, and I would go over to his house, and instead of playing video games, it was like, hey, I've got to practice. So then as a non-golfer, I'm like, oh, can I come? So I did, and he helped me, learn to start, and I was actually very good at the other sports, according to my mum, obviously. I think I was too, but golf was the one that just really lit the fire inside of me. I was obsessed with the details and the lifestyle, the traveling, the courses, the people you could meet, more importantly, the game, and just there's no surprise that I'm teaching now because I'm just obsessed with learning about golf even now after all those years. So, that's really the backstory, and just, kept playing the other sports. And you got to play with
Fleetwood a lot when you were a kid, right?
I played with him once, I think. I mean, I was probably 12. It was one of my first rounds. So I don't know him, but he's still friendly with my friend who I haven't caught up with in a while just because it's been so long. But and that's one of the tough things about living in the States. Obviously, you grow up with people, you don't see them for 15 years. It's tough to stay in contact. But if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here, and definitely wouldn't have had the life that I've had. So
then you come across the pond, right? You start going to college. First time in America was at college, was like basically the time you stepped onto campus the first time you had been over here?
No, I'd visited with parents, and then also I got picked for this this trip, which was like the best school golfers in England. You had to win a tournament, and then you got selected, and there was 12 guys, and we started in Savannah and played 22 rounds in 23 days.
Oh my gosh.
Against other kids that were going to go to college, like Arkansas or Maryland, or not top players, but very high level compared to what I was used to. And
was this before the Walker Cup kind of, but a similar kind of?
Well, it's a traditional trip. It's not like you're playing for England. It was like the trip had been going for 100 years, and it was kind of whoever had been on the trip prior.
Got it.
They were members at Pine Valley. We played there, Congressional, Bolter's Roll, and just got to play with all the best juniors in that East Coast area. And it was awesome because it just made me realize this is what I want to do. So we would stay in some dorms, some host families, you know how that goes.
Right.
And some of them are friends to this day. So as soon as I did that trip, I was like, I've got to get out of England and go there. As much as I love it at home,
right. Yeah. So then you go to Nova Southeastern. So tell us a little bit about that journey, like going over here to school. Probably kind of hard to choose a college because I mean, if I was trying to choose a university in Europe to go to, I was like, Cambridge. That's the only one I know.
Yeah, I mean,
so how was the whole journey with Nova Southeastern?
Yeah, I mean, I was getting recruited by some other schools and, let's say bigger names, ones I'd heard of. But, when you're from England, they don't know how tried and tested you are on courses over here. It's tough to get a bigger scholarship unless you're one of the top 5 players in the country or top 10, let's say. So a friend of mine went to Nova Southeastern, a member at my club, and he had improved so much. He came home and won every tournament. And then I visited him like one December, and I was like, this place is awesome. So then the coach started to follow me, watch me play. And then I found out my best friend now, Ben Taylor, was going too. And I was like, now there's 3 of us, like really close friends on the same team in South Florida. What could be better? And we had this trip lined up with my mum to go visit all these schools. And the first trip was to Nova, and I just didn't even bother going to the other schools. I just was like, I'm going here.
Absolutely. So you come over here, you go to Nova Southeastern, you win a national championship, which is probably worth a bunch of stories in itself. And then after you do that, so then you was it that when you went over to Asia?
Yeah. I was looking to go and play over there for a long period of time and do some coaching just so I could kind of support myself. And
were you going to coach or were you going to play?
Play. And do some coaching just to like make a living because I had some money and obviously it runs out quick as you know. So and just living over there was
bankroll can go south in a hurry when they're $1,500 entry fees and not making enough birdies.
Yeah, I mean I don't want to go into China too much, but if you hook a ball in the trees, like you're looking at, let alone finding your ball, you're looking at seeing a king cobra. So it's not the best place to live.
Right.
And everyone that was playing over there was commuting. Like from the States and from England. I'm like, how the hell do you guys do this? It's like a $2,000 flight every time. So now I was living over there and it was short. And it wasn't that long, but it was a good experience. I was just immature. And then, it was one of those things where I don't regret it, but at the same time, it wasn't easy. So
sure. And then from there, is that when you went to Switzerland, or was that when you came back to and kind of?
Yeah, I was I was still playing a bit in England and just kind of deciding on what I wanted to do.
Because one of your mentors is David Ledbetter, and for those that don't know David Ledbetter, I mean, David's probably, I would say that David, you could probably say the reason that I'm here doing a podcast is because David Ledbetter put teaching pros or golf instructors like on the map as I don't know what the word would be, but like a profession where there is a personality behind it, right? Like he's kind of the founding principle of making golf instruction a business in a sense, rather than just Chubbs and Happy Gilmore with his arms crossed saying it's all in your hips.
Yeah, I mean, David I met him when I was 15, so he ran a tournament in England that I won a couple years in a row, and he just took me under his wing. I don't really know why. He didn't need to. He's just such a giving, great human being that loves to give back, and literally wouldn't be anywhere where I am in life now without him. So, when I was stopped playing, he'd felt not sorry for me, but it was like, hey, what do you want to do with your life? And I said, well, I'd love to keep playing, but obviously the money side is tough. Like unless you've got backers and, that lifestyle, even after caddying, is brutal, as you know. Great fun as well at the same time. But he was like, listen, I want to bring you over and work for me, but I had to wait to get my US work visa. So at the time I was just living in Switzerland working for TPT Golf, which the company's done fantastic now with the shafts.
Yep.
That was probably for 6 months, and then got my visa in about August or September and started to work for him. And what was insane about that was most coaches, I mean, they start at the bottom. Like, you're giving beginners, you're giving anyone. Yeah. And I was going straight to the PGA Tour, like on the ranges, filming, shadowing, working with billionaires, like people that were famous.
So it would kind of be, would your lesson with Mitch or with David be, he would be working with, say, Charles Howell or something, or maybe it's a golf school and it's David working, and then he would work with the player and then essentially kind of pass them off and say, okay, Mitch, like, make sure they stay on thing, and then he works with the next guy. And then you're kind of his, we'll call it a lead assistant of just making sure that the student stays on task.
Exactly. So you're doing all the filming, all the tech, if there's any data capture, and then if it's a clinic, it's David's leading, obviously, but I'm just making sure they're doing exactly what we want.
And who were some of those, it's always fun to kind of work with PGA Tour players. Like, who were some of those people that you were around with working with earlier in your career?
Yeah, I mean, Lydia Ko was a big one. She was world number one at the time, which was pretty awesome. Michelle Wee, she was coming a little bit like her career was slowing down, I would say.
Yep.
Trevor Immelman, Ian Poulter, Ollie Wilson, who's on the European tour. God, I can't even remember half of them, but there was a lot of guys. And some guys, it's interesting, like some guys would just come in once a year for an opinion.
Yeah.
And he would, whether he would say, I'm working with that person or not. I mean, he would, but it was just
getting a second eyes.
Kind of that. Or just, hey, some players just wanted once a year and that was it. And then he would do videos and text them back and stuff. So, when that sort of December rolled around, we really picked up with a lot of guys coming in for off season, and it was very cool to learn like how he, assessed. I mean, for the first, if we did a 3-day session with like say Lydia after a season, it was like, hey, like the 3 hours of talking, what's going on? Like I need to know everything, and just analyzing her game like crazy, and it was really cool to see. I think it gets definitely misconstrued half the time, but when you've been given like the blessing I have to actually see what goes on behind closed doors, it's pretty cool.
So you've gone to Nova Southeastern, you've been in China, in Asia, you've been in Switzerland building shafts, the TVT, and helping design those things. Then you come back, you're working for the number one instructor in the world, being his first assistant for, 7 years or so?
Yeah, probably 4 or 5. But
4 or 5 years,
I
right?
shadowed when I was playing and visiting him, like for Christmas, I stayed with him and stuff. So I was always around him teaching. I just still had a goal to play, obviously.
And then I think when you had applied to TGR, I remember seeing your resume and saying, okay, like this is a really, really unique story. Like, I'm pretty passionate in the fact of like I want teachers that know how to play, and like whether nothing against the PGA of America, but if it's a PGA guy, great. But it's more of like, hey, can you coach? What's your history? How much of playing do you do? So I remember when I called Mitch, when I called you, we essentially, I think your interview was, the interview questions might have been 15 minutes, but we just basically sat on the phone for an hour and just shot the breeze for an hour. I was like, oh my gosh, I love this guy. I got to get him up here. So then he comes up, your interview, I think there's like, that might have been the most snow we've ever had in Ohio.
I've lived here for sure.
Yeah. So he comes up from Florida, thinking, why am I moving to Columbus, Ohio? There's 18 inches of snow. But that night you stayed over till like, I don't know, like 2 in the morning, right? And we were just hanging out at the house, which was great. Hey guys, I hope you are enjoying this episode of the Stock Shot Secrets podcast. If you are enjoying it, be sure to like this episode. Be sure to subscribe so you can always see when they're coming out. And most importantly, if you would be so kind to be able to share this podcast with other passionate golfers who are trying to get better and build stock shots, because it grows through you sharing it. Thank you so much for tuning in. And now back to Stock Shot Secrets. So now fast forwarding, there's obviously a lot of stuff happening in TGR since we grew, but now kind of circling back to this whole PGA Tour thing, one of your best buddies is Ben Taylor. So you're with Ben at Nova Southeastern.
Yep.
And since basically you caddied for Ben in what major was it?
The British Open.
Right. So how was that? How was caddying for him because obviously he's your best buddy and you're going out and you're looping for him for a year or half a year or whatever. But was there any cool stories with the British Open and caddying there?
Yeah.
Or like, what was it like? And where was that? What course was
Andrews,
that? Oh my gosh.
Just bliss, honestly. He didn't play that well, but the draw he got, he teed off at 4 p.m. It was.
Wow.
I went and walked the course in the morning, and on 12, Dustin Johnson drove the 440-yard par 4, which I just laughed. It was downwind, and then Ben hit 4-iron in the late at night. So I was just like, that's a different course. So when like the guys complain about the draw, like I get it because it does play so different.
Right.
So especially links, you want that.
And so it like switches midday.
Yeah, and it gets cold. Scotland in July. I mean, it was 39 degrees. We've got a picture of us with like 8 waterproofs on. It's hilarious, and it's like nice summer. But that's links golf. It was so fun. I mean, We met Phil Mickelson, did a practice round with, I think, Stenson and Webb Simpson, which was cool. And we were 22 at the time, so I'd caddied for him loads. He caddied for me in a couple of events, and it just was hilarious because I'm like, this guy could win the tournament, you know. I got him on my bag.
Yeah. And Ben is like, you know, I've had the pleasure of meeting Ben a bunch, and he's like one of the greatest human beings there is, like super down to earth and amazing. So now, fast forward, I guess almost a decade, right? And it really, he kind of pulls you in to say, hey, can you actually be my mentor, not mentor, but my coach, and really lead me to where he was, because he was kind of struggling a little bit on the Korn Ferry Tour, and in the last year or two, he's had some amazing progress. So what's it, I guess, first off, what are the main differences you find with working with players like Ben Taylor, who's on the PGA Tour, and you're going to PGA Tour events, and then working with, you know, the amateur golfers that are in Columbus, Ohio, or flying in, or like, because I feel like working with them, it's a different thing. Yeah. Right? How do you find that?
You have to be a psychologist to some extent, because you've got to know, like, when they're open to hear, like, some information, or they need a pick-me-up, or a motivational talk, or what the hell was you doing on that hole? Like, and sometimes, you know, players are very egotistical and confident in themselves, which they should be, but you need to read the room and read the situation to know when you can input that stuff. And I think amateur golfers are coming to us, paying us, and they're almost like, okay, tell me what I need to do, and hopefully they do it. Right. But it's different. And I think coaching elite players is you just got to find that those little 1% gains that they can make, because obviously
so you're really trying to just save like a tenth of a shot.
Shoot 70.2, and that's a bad year. Like, it's crazy. So you know, with the swing stuff, obviously I've known Ben for so long. I've known when he's played his best golf, some of his bad golf, and I've always been there. So I think I've been able to, over the years, be part of the team and translate it in, let's call it Ben language, which is, you know, I think valuable skill as a coach. And some teachers who are so good are really smart, but sometimes like that might not suit the individual. So you got to really know like what someone wants and then what they need, you know? Yeah.
And how do you kind of take that? So like in that same mindset, taking that onto the lesson T of TGR, right? Like what are some of, I guess it'd be cool, like as a coach, you know, is there anybody that comes to mind that's like, hey, there was this student, and like here's some of the transformation that they've taken from, you know, joining and kind of jumping in? And because a lot of times, you know, some players have lessons, sometimes they don't have lessons. You know, sometimes lessons are terrifying because they're like, it's going to feel different. And it's like, we want you to feel different. The more different, the better, right? So any students come to mind of like, hey, here's a really cool success story, kind of like Ben. Because Ben's, I mean, he's just came off for the year, you know, the last year and a half or so, he's been playing the best golf of his life, really. Not thanks to you, but I mean, in large part to what you've been doing with him. So what about just on the amateur tee?
Yeah, I think since moving here, and this is not like a wow, look at this story. I think my stories have changed because you've gone from one area of the game to now like almost nurturing people. So like a cool story for me the other day was like I taught Bree how to hold a club, and she's getting calls from college coaches. And obviously she's been part of our academy, but when I worked at the Ledbetter, like people flew in for lessons, you know, right. They came to see us once or twice a year. You gave them 3 days, they left, you stayed in touch a little bit, but you never got to create like a personal connection, like with their family or their brother or whatever it may be. And although that's not like oh wow, like I've taken loads of guys from 18 to like below 5, like that doesn't really make me that happy. I'm happy for them. But seeing someone that's young and like doesn't have a ton of confidence and now like believes in themselves, walks around differently, that for me is like more.
Which I think for what you're echoing, which is so amazing, is that's really the essence as to why I do like what I'm doing and what TGR is about. Is I actually got in a dialogue with my online instructors at the Golf Room Everywhere this about 2 weeks ago, and I go, hey, poll question. Do you guys think that, first off, what do you think is the difference between instructors and a coach? And they kind of go back and forth, and I'm like, we are not in the business of being instructors. In my opinion, a swing instructor is a guy who looks at your swing and is like, hey, you get the shaft shallow and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, like that's fun. And like, I love nerding out on golf swings more than anybody, right? Yeah. Just like you do. But I think for me, it's really golf has called us into it's the vessel in which, or the conduit in which we're investing into their lives to help them become like their best version, like really fulfill their unique self. So to the students like Bree, when you see the transformation of these people like year after year to where they come in, for example, and they've got shy shoulders and they can't really ever say anything positive about themselves in the realm of golf, and then they get to a point after a year or two and they're like, yeah, you're like, you're good at golf, and they're like, yeah, I am good. You're like, yeah, you are, right? Like, that's amazing because you're seeing like their character and their heart change, which is so impactful for, you know, us as like essentially creating disciples, like so that they're fulfilling their calling and they're nurturing themselves, which is really, really cool. So, what about just, you know, in regards to the technology, right? Really quick, I want to kind of dive into this for a sec. In regards to the technology of TGR and just how it's changed, right? Because you and I are in a different generation to where the coaches that are coming up now, it's kind of like they just know TrackMan. When you look at like David Ledbetter and my mentor, Mike Bender, like there was no technology. It was like a camera. And before that, it was just your eyeballs. So how is it that you're using technology nowadays as a coach to really see into what the players need to be doing, whether it's Ben or it's just, you know, maybe even better, probably the recreational player, quite frankly?
Yeah, I think it's so important because you can get seduced by technology, I would say, and it's so important for a teacher to use it for our analysis, but then you have to put it across simply for the student. And it's different. Yeah, it depends on person to person. You may have a tour player. One of my great friends, he won't mind me saying this if he ever hears it. He's so analytical. So that guy is going to not listen to you unless you explain it, and he can tell 1% if you're whatting, you know. So to him, you have to give him the data.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like that. I'm sure you were too.
Yeah.
Like to some extent.
I need to know the why.
But then sometimes you've got people that do not need to hear it. You know, for instance, I was teaching Mini Tiger last night, Jackson. Right. We put his putting stroke.
Absolutely incredible.
I mean, I'll post a video. It's incredible.
Yeah.
One of the most talented kids I've ever seen. But he putts amazing. So we put his stuff on Capto, and I said to Pete, like, do not show him. Like, I want to see this. We'll sit down, maybe talk about it.
You just want it as, like, this is the standard of beauty.
And to some extent, it's like, what's so nice about Sportsbox is I'll be at an event with Ben and film him on the 12th at Muirfield Village, and now I've got data when he was playing good, and I know where his swing was on all the ranges, and then when he's bad. And then as a coach, it helps us kind of find that
Sometimes
really.
I think the amateur golfer kind of forgets that too, of like, what were you, they're like, I'm going to get a lesson when I'm hitting it bad. It's like, actually, sometimes when you're like hitting it great, you need to come in and have a coach or have your coach, because I really think that, and we believe this, right? Like, everyone has a coach, and I have, like, if someone said, Kyle, who's your coach? I go, my coach is Mike Bender, right? Like, I'm going to go down to Florida in a month and a half. I think I'm going to go get a lesson, like, just cause, right? Because I haven't, it's good to do once or twice a year if I'm going down there. But it's nice to have those baselines when you're playing good to say, oh, like, I know what I'm doing when I'm playing good, right? Like, these are the things.
Where your numbers are, where all that stuff.
Yeah.
Listen, I mean, golf is a hobby, right? It's fun. So don't ever lose that passion for it, because it's cool to learn what's coming out. But also you have to analyze and like kind of sit back and go, is this really making me better? You know?
And just, final question of just for the amateur golfers, right, that are listening, or whoever is listening, or just passionate players, what do you find personally between your students, the ones that really make strides? Like, what are the things that those players are doing, that amateur players doing, that the other amateur players aren't doing, right? Like, how are they getting the biggest return on investment for their time spent with you? Yeah,
what's interesting, I think we've obviously got such a great facility. The people that practice the most aren't always the ones that succeed. It's the quality of practice. I mean, you must be bored of listening to me across the room. Do your slow motion swings. That's what, like, Ben Hogan did, his decent swing, But just do those, commit to it. You don't need 50 thoughts. Stop going online, stick to your plan. We've all been there where we're like, oh, there must be an easier way. Let me watch a video. Oh, my impact's wrong. Yeah, there's 5 things before that are wrong. So sticking to that plan. And I played I know you probably did too, my best golf when I worked on the same thing for a year.
Yep.
Like it might come across in
and
a
there's a
different
lot of
way.
beauty in that, because it's like, man, if I'm playing
peace.
bad, it's like I just need to go back and do my thing.
And it's peace of mind,
Right.
because
That's what we always say. Like
is just
your stuff is your stuff, right? And you have your drill of drills.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
well, Mitch, bro, thanks so much for coming. I love you to
Pleasure.
death. You're the best. Thanks for being a part of TGR.
Yeah, pleasure.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Hey, guys, thank you so much for listening to the latest episode of Stock Shot Secrets. Now, as a listener of Stock Shot Secrets, I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to get better. So if you were to go to stockshotclub.com, I'm going to give you 7 days free access where you can send us your video and we will give you personalized individual attention as to what you need to do so that you can start building stock shots. So just go to stockshotclub.com and register there. We'll give you 7 days free where you can try it. And then if we like it, you can stay inside the Stock Shot Club where we can become your coach and walk with you for your entire journey. Thank you so much. And be sure to go visit stockshotclub.com.